You've gotten the happy news that you're expecting. What now? Maybe you start thinking about what you want your delivery and labor experience to look like. But if this is your first time or even your second or third, there might be things that you haven't even thought to think about. That's why today's conversation with Deborah Koumoutsidis is so important. Deborah's a doula and a certified massage therapist and the founder of Pelvic Love Massage Therapy. She's been a part of more than 1,000 births. So basically, she's seen every type of pregnancy, birth, and even postpartum journey. Today, she's sharing the things she's learned about what you should really prepare for, who should be on your birth and postpartum support team, what that even is, and how to make a plan that will empower you and feel just right for you. This is Getting Started with Baby, the podcast that brings you practical tips, loved products, and lived experience from parents who've been there. Brought to you by thestarterset.com, an upcoming service focused on helping parents find just the right things at the right time, personalized for their families. I'm your host, Jane Dashevsky, a mom on the other side of 2 under 2. I'm still actively trying to figure all this out, and I'm bringing you perspectives from across the parenting spectrum. Please note, this podcast contains opinions, anecdotes, and personal experiences. We encourage you to independently evaluate any content and consult with appropriate professionals as needed for your specific circumstances. Let's get into it. This is a topic I'm super excited to talk about because as a mom of 2, I was so curious about, what a doula was. I got so many recommendations about working with a doula, and so many people had such great experiences. And welcome to the podcast, Deborah.
Thank you so very much for having me. I'm really excited to open some doors about doula care.
Yeah, we're excited to learn more about it. So to get started, could you share a little bit more about your background and your family as well?
Okay, so I have been a massage therapist. This is my 20th year, so 20 years since I graduated school. And the year after I became a doula and got my certification, I've assisted with somewhere over 1,000 births, but that count was a few years ago, so we've kind of lost track on that. And I work with pregnant and postpartum women in the clinic, and I'm a part of their births, even if I'm not present. I am the mom of 2 grown daughters. They are 19 and 23. Both my births, I had doulas with me. My first birth, I had one doula. My second birth, I had 2 doulas. And it really changed how I took care of my own clients after I had had 2 doulas in my second birth. It changed my doula practice in a lot of ways.
How did you start on this journey getting into doula care and pregnancy and postpartum care?
Well, when I was in massage therapy school, there was an older lady in the class, and she was pregnant, and she always asked me to do the body work on her. So she became a little more comfortable with being treated by me. And I started to really fully see that a lot of the things that they were teaching us, there was no modifications for pregnancy. It was just do not touch, do not touch. So I was a new graduate when I registered for a prenatal massage therapy training. So I didn't choose it. It kind of just fell to me, which is...
Yeah, chose you.
Yeah.
You said that your perspective on your own doula practice changed pretty significantly after your second birth, where you had 2 doulas assisting. How did it change your practice?
I ended up with kidney stones at 36 weeks during my second child, and I ended up hospitalized for a whole week because I was in excruciating pain. So they were waiting for me to get to 37 weeks to induce me. And my first child, I had given birth. I went into labor on my own. No drugs, perfectly physiological birth. And then I was in the hospital on morphine for a week, trying to avoid it as much as possible. And I didn't get a chance to work one-on-one with my doula and talk about okay, now how is this week of being hospitalized? And my resilience had been kind of tackled and depleted. And as soon as I asked for help, they offered me the epidural, and I took it. My perspective and their perspective is that I had a beautiful delivery, but I had trauma because nobody said to me, let's get you in the shower or let's
Mhm,
do this. They just said yes to the epidural, which I didn't want the epidural. That was on my plan.
mhm.
And so it changed the way that I work with my birthing families. I want to know exactly what you want. I want to know what you want to hear when you ask for help the first time, the second time, the third time, and at what point is the epidural to be offered. So it changes my prenatal visits. I make a crisis plan with you. We follow that crisis plan specifically during the birth, because at no point should your first pain relieving option be the epidural unless that's what you want. So there's so much more planning in your prenatal visits when you work with me as a doula now than I ever did before, and that most doulas do. We sit, we make a plan, we talk about code words, we talk about your love language, we talk about how you like to be comforted. Do you want loud cheering with pom poms, or do you want to be silently whispered in your ear that you're strong and powerful and you can do this very hard thing?
That must have been such a disorienting experience, kind of having one perspective of how things were gonna go and then seeing things go a different way, which I
Mhm.
think happens to so many moms in general with birth, right?
Absolutely. You don't know how that day is going. That
Yeah.
things change. And when something medical comes up, you have to be just primarily thinking about the health of the baby and the health of yourself.
So you talked a little bit about now having that experience and having worked with doulas in the past. Crisis planning is part of what you do. What does it look like to work with you as someone onboarding their first time working with a doula? What can they expect?
One of the things that we do differently is we send out a workbook. So it gives us an opportunity to meet you where you are rather than let's teach every single person the same thing. Right? Because
Mhm.
some people are highly educated on birth. Maybe they've given birth before and they have a birth trauma and they want to do things different. But it gives you all of the options. So it talks about, do you want to wear a hospital gown? Do you want to wear your own clothing? Do you want to labor at home? Do you want to go in as soon as your membranes rupture or at the first contraction? And then we get to meet them where they are. And that changes my first prenatal visit. That first visit is about going over that form. And the second visit is always about advocacy and comfort measures and how to protect your relationship in the birthing room. Because we all know those stories where the way that your partner is comforting you is not always the way that you receive comfort. And we have this expectation of our partners. And there was this TikTok trend that was going around a few years ago about like, my husband was a badass in birth and he was so amazing. And then there was all this shaming about birth partners, shooting the Nerf gun because he's napping. Do you remember seeing that
Mhm.
TikTok trend? And I'm
Yeah.
thinking, why do we have this expectation of our birth partners to show up when we don't have any idea of what's going to happen on that day? We don't know what we need. So that last prenatal visit is almost always about, how do we work together as a unit? How do I protect your relationship? I teach the partner to only speak in between contractions, use language that she needs, ask her about her love language, and we put it on paper so that they feel right. How many birth
Yeah.
stories have you heard where it's like the husband has been sent to the waiting room?
I think it's just an interesting thing too, because on the one hand, as the woman, even if you've read up on things, the reality of how the birth goes may be so different than whatever picture was in your head, especially as a first time mom where you haven't had that experience really yet. And to your point, we sort of expect the partner or whoever's in there with you to know exactly what to do, but they're also experiencing it for the
Emotions
first
are
time.
involved. So we talk about that. We talk about physiological pain versus harmful pain and have them fully comprehend that this is a pain that is needed and is not fearful. And I love the way that my onboarding looks. I love that when after the second prenatal visit, I usually get, I'm ready. I'm ready. I'm not nervous anymore. I know that my partner's ready, and the partners feel like, okay, now I feel like I can take an active role.
How often do people feel really confident about what it is they want? Does that change over time? What does that really look like?
I like to tell moms that if you really have a perfect picture on paper of how things are going to go, chances are it's not going to go that way.
Mhm.
What you have to do is really be able to pivot from your birth plan. So there's a BRAIN acronym that is used all over the world to measure the suggestion or the intervention that any primary care provider is suggesting. And basically it's like asking for the benefits, the risk, what are the alternatives? What is my instinct telling me? And what if we do nothing for every intervention? It's known all over the world, BRAIN acronym. So I've modified the BRAIN acronym, of course, and that is when someone makes a suggestion for anything, no matter what it is, to you or to your baby or to the birth plan, you ask, is my baby okay? If the answer to that is no, then you're willing to pivot in any way, shape, or form because you want
Mhm.
your baby to be okay. But if the answer to that is yes, the next question is, as a birthing person, am I okay? If the dad or birth partner is advocating at that time, he's going to ask, is my partner okay? And if the answer to that is no, you're going to pivot in any way to save your, birthing person's life. But if the answer is that to both of those questions is no, you can take a breath. Right. So it's like, okay, all the fear is gone. Nothing is wrong. Now I can use that non-fearful moment to ask for benefits, risk, alternatives, instincts, and nothing to make an informed decision. And that will be the only way that you will feel comfortable pivoting from your birth plan because you made the decision without fear and with informed consent. And if you don't have the ability to ask for that, you will always feel that you were bullied into making that decision.
Totally.
And it's so simple. But if you ask those two questions and there's no more fear involved, you're able to say, well, wait a second. Why are we doing this then? I need a few more seconds or I need a little more information. And then I need to speak with my partner about this.
And I think what you said about how if you don't have that space to ask the question, you end up in retrospect feeling like you'd been bullied or like you hadn't really been
Or
working off complete information. And it was like
Mhm.
in this chaos moment. I remember with my second, my son's heart rate started dropping. Suddenly the room was filled with doctors and everybody was starting to panic. And it turned out that the answer to the question of is anyone in danger here was sort of I don't know. So what happens in an I don't know scenario? Because I remember feeling, oh my God, things aren't going the way that I want them to go. And obviously urgency is really important, but sometimes it's also like, can someone explain anything?
So in that scenario, if I had been working with you both, in that moment, I would have had your husband fully trained to say, wait a second, I'm noticing a shift in energy in this room. Can someone please explain to me what is happening? Right? And or I'm feeling a shift in energy. Is my wife and my child okay?
Mhm.
And so in an I don't know situation, in that moment, for me, I would have, because I've been in so many births, I already know that I'm thinking in my head, okay, was there induction involved? Was there Pitocin involved? Were you already an epidural? So all of those situations right there would also show me that there is a possibility for decels of the heart rate. And that can happen as baby is coming down the birth canal, and it almost always happens in the birth room at a specific point. I know not to freak out, but in a non-physiological birth, almost all of the primary care providers, because they have to maintain heart rate on the chart, it's a moment of panic.
Mhm.
So in that moment, I would have been focusing on the two of you and just trying to settle your fears a little bit, right?
Mhm.
In most situations, when there's an emergency, they can have that baby out in less than 5 minutes.
Something that's come up, I can hear it in this conversation and other conversations I've had as part of this podcast is, well, as a mom, your experience is like one or two or three, or it's not very many, right? You've been part of so many births, more than 1,000, right?
Mhm.
Is there some sort of common thread that you typically see in pregnancy and delivery?
Yeah, for sure. There's a few, but one of the things that I really see is this blind trust that happens with us. The majority of us will go for a hospital birth, and that the nursing staff and the OBGYN staff will take care of us and give us the birth that we choose. And that is not the picture. It is not accurate. And what women don't fully understand is that every single person and every little thing that happens during birth is an intervention. Your husband is an intervention. The doula is an intervention. The nurse is an intervention. The student is an intervention. And all of those things can and most likely will stall your labor. So going into it blind almost always ends up with birth trauma. There are a few women that go in and have beautiful births with no prenatal education and no planning. But that's the biggest thing that I'm seeing is this blind trust in the medical system or primary care providers to get you what you want in birth.
I think that brings up, there's just so many voices when it comes to pregnancy, delivery, postpartum, taking care of the baby, fourth trimester, etc., all of that stuff.
Mhm.
And as the mom, it can sometimes feel, one, hard to know who to trust, and then also to find your own voice. Do you have any advice for mom experiencing that?
Yes. So I always ask who's going to be a part of your birth team and who's going to be a part of your postpartum support team. And then I very bluntly say, if the person coming into your birth, like let's say you're bringing your sister, if she did not have a physiological birth and that's what you want, your sister's not the answer. If you are choosing your sister to help you with breastfeeding and she didn't breastfeed, that's not the answer. And it is so hard to hear because we want our sisters or our moms or whoever. I talk about building your team. And I think one of the things that I have started saying in the last 2 years, which I was so uncomfortable saying until about 2 years ago, is that if you're hiring me, then I'm the expert. Google's not the expert. If you're hiring me to be the birth doula, then I'm the expert in that moment. And if you're hiring me for postpartum care, then I'm the expert. So instead of going to Google or to going to all of these other resources, choose the expert that you've chosen or find a friend for each stage of your pregnancy. It doesn't have to be one continuous person. So maybe it's a mentor for birth, a mentor for postpartum, or a mentor for breastfeeding, but only choose one person and try to stay off of Google.
In talking to other moms, there's certainly some gaps that they feel, whether it was in their delivery experience, whether it was in the postpartum care and what they were expecting and how things turned out. Having been part of so many people's birth journeys, are there gaps that you see commonly that you think we should be better preparing moms for?
The first gap is going into birth blindly. And doing no preparation. And the second one is postpartum. There's such a major gap, and it's really quite devastating that postpartum, where everything is about the baby, and a
Yeah.
lot of women don't fully understand that breastfeeding is natural, but it is a skill that is learned both by mom and baby. And when you're focusing on breastfeeding, somebody needs to be taking care of you 100% for the first few days because it's hard and it's beautiful, but it can be really challenging. So one of the things that I do in the clinic is when the mom has seen me for last prenatal massage, pregnancy massage, I ask them to book their new mama wellness before their 6-week checkup so that we can see what's happening with their body. So when they go to their primary care provider, she has all the information. So if she's feeling pressure in her pelvis or her scar is not healing from an episiotomy, that she brings it up that day, because the 6-week visit, if you don't ask them to check you, they don't always check. They just say, is everything okay down there? And like, I don't know. I'm not a doctor. Right.
Yeah.
So that's one of the things, the gaps that I'm really, really seeing. And, I'm trying to educate women on that a little more. There's a free resource on our Instagram about your 6-week checkup and what to ask. And we teach it to everyone in the clinic. And I meet with my doula clients to say, when you go back, ask for a check, ask them to check your pelvic floor engagement, make sure that everything is healing well. So I've seen that has changed in the last years. People are hosting nesting parties more than they're hosting baby showers. And I'm so excited about that because I think that's so important because we want to do so many things in those first 6 weeks. We want to, have baby photographers in, and we want to get out for a walk. Or I have moms who go to weddings within the first week. They want to come here for a treatment or a date night within the first 6 weeks or 8 weeks or 10 weeks. But then when they don't feel well, they feel disappointed that they can't do those things. And it's almost impossible to do all of those things and to feel great and to take care of the baby if there's not somebody taking care of you, of the birthing person. And that means having food prepped, setting up food delivery, having someone come and do your laundry instead of holding the baby, and being strong enough to say, yes, you can come by, but or yes, please come by and drop off food, but I'm not open to a visit today.
Yeah, that's such a big reality, right? I hear a lot of moms talk about how they feel after they had the baby. Certainly all the attention's on the baby, which makes sense, but that they just felt totally unprepared. They didn't have the level of support. They didn't really think about how to set up those postpartum visits with family and friends in a way that would also feel good for them. When someone is thinking about doula care, what does that look like in postpartum? Are you still communicating with your doula postpartum? Is that what you should expect?
So I work one-on-one with my patients and doula clients for a whole week to 10 days after. And I'll be honest, that continuous text support doesn't really stop when you work with me because we offer a free service that is online. It's every 2 weeks we offer Doula Deborah on demand. So you can hop on every second Tuesday and ask any question that you like. And as long as it's not medical advice.
Obviously, working with a doula can be an extra charge for some families. What would you recommend if someone, one, isn't sure that they can afford a doula? What can they do? Or if they're just sort of on the fence, how should they think about it?
So this question is really important to answer because I do think that a lot of people, when they hear a doula's fee, that it can be quite shocking. Like for me, my fees are a little bit higher, but because I'm a massage therapist, I'm able to do special billing. So as a massage therapist, one of our modalities is labor support. So we're able to bill some of your health benefits under doula care as a massage therapist. So that really helps here in Canada. And also if a doula has a certification in the States, they can get a special billing. It can be paid for by the government as well or through their health benefits. I do have some doulas that are able to do that. But let's say your funding is really, really zero. There are doulas that offer pro bono. I did this year, I did 2 births fully free so that I could give one of my new doulas a little more experience. We chose a cesarean birth and a hospital birth and an induction to really get her that experience. A lot of higher number doulas or more experienced doulas, if they're mentoring, you can ask them, what is their bottom line? And there are doulas that offer pro bono. I have done pro bono work ever since I've been practicing. Most doulas would do a meet and greet with you for free. So you basically get a sit down with them where you can ask them anything. And then another thing is the Doula Deborah on Demand. There's a lot of doulas that offer classes for free, and that's something that we do. It's an actual meet and greet. You can ask me anything, and you get me for an hour. I mean, you might be the only person in on that night, so you're getting a private. And then on my Instagram, we have links to different things that are free. Like we do an induction class. So if you want to learn about induction, you can download this webinar and we talk about it from start to finish. So there's a lot of things that are available like that I don't think parents and families are aware of.
That makes sense. And it's helpful to know that those resources exist and that there's those ways to get the care as well.
Mm-hmm.
How important is a meet and greet in deciding to work with a doula?
The meet and greet is mandatory when you're working with me. It's the first step because your energy has to match mine, right?
Yeah.
You have to have full trust in me because your birth partner is the king of oxytocin. My job is to protect that at all times. And if you don't feel that energy within me, then it's not going to show up in the birth room.
Right.
You have to fully feel safe and vulnerable and be able to let the oxytocin flow. So that person that you invite into your birth room needs to be able to let that happen. and
Mhm.
make things happen so that can be protected.
Are there questions that you think expectant parents should ask as part of the meet and greet? Get a better read on, is there a good energy match? And, like, is this going to be a good relationship?
I think one of the mistakes that doulas make is they tell their own birth stories because really it doesn't matter. It doesn't
Yeah.
matter, right? I'm here to support your birth story, but I do feel like asking them their philosophy on birth, their philosophy on breastfeeding, and just a few questions. It doesn't have to be very specific questions, but thoughtful questions like, what is your opinion on this, your opinion on vaccines? Your opinion on circumcision, right? Those are all controversial topics. And if your doula doesn't respond to that in a way that you feel supported in, then you know that that's not the right doula for you. We have to be non-biased. And I feel like any doula that is putting those fears or anything about those things, then they're not being fully non-biased. Of course, we all have our opinions, but you have to tuck those opinions away and show up for the birthing family in a way that they feel supported. So I wouldn't say there's specific questions you should be asking a doula because I do see a lot of like, I've been at 1,000 births, so please hire me. I was a great doula when I did 100 births. I was way better at 200 and at 1,000 for the last 5 years. I don't think my doula skills has sharpened. My preparing for birth skills has sharpened.
Mhm. Yeah.
Right. So
I imagine you've just seen every variety of thing that can happen at
yes.
this point. Yeah.
Yeah. And I'm also comfortable with saying, I don't know that. And I'm not comfortable talking about it. And I know that that's not going to impact their trust in me. Whereas when you're younger and newer in that situation, you're more prone to say, uncomfortable saying, I don't know, because we think
Yeah.
we're supposed to know everything as women. And of course, that's not the way it is. And I don't know everything about birth. I'm still learning. I'm very thankful that I'm still learning.
So, to ask you, what is your birthing philosophy?
That every woman deserves to feel seen and heard, and that she deserves to have the power to advocate for the birth that her and her birth partner has chosen.
That's an empowering message.
Hmm.
Well, switching tacks a little bit, one of the things that we do here, as this podcast is sponsored by a service called the Starter Set,
Okay.
is we try to help parents sort through the noise of all of the stuff that comes along with having a baby or being pregnant. And so I'd love to hear your perspective as a mom, as a doula, as someone who's seen so many pregnancy journeys. Are there things that you think are particularly helpful for moms to have?
A village, 100% a village.
Yeah.
And the other thing that I would love to be able to give to every pregnant person is the ability to forgive themselves when they make a mistake and ask for help. And to know that this is not a journey of womanhood that is done well alone,
Yeah.
right?
That's such a big one.
Yeah. And I think that we have this mindset that I should know this. I'm pregnant and I'm having babies, so I should know this. No, that's not accurate. Finding a community or a place where you feel validated is imperative.
You mentioned when you were in your community that you didn't have that village initially and you had to build it. A lot of us are living further away from our families in this day and age, right? And some of our close friends and all of that. So what did it take for you to build a village? And do you have any advice for people who are finding themselves in a situation where, yes, they know it's important, but they're not really sure where to get started?
I was new to this town, and my husband's friends were really like friends from high school, and they weren't very welcoming. And I fully understood. Like, they had their own friends, so why did they need another friend? So I was going through that exact scenario. My family lived on the east coast of Canada, and I was now in this new town. And one of the things that I did was I became friends with other mothers that I admired. I actually asked for help when I needed it, whether that was Can you stay with my older daughter while I go take a shower and a bath with my newborn baby? And anyone that made me feel crappy about my parenting choices, I dropped really fast. It was really hard to do, but to be able to say to someone, your parenting values don't align with mine, and unfortunately, I can't be in this relationship. And it took a lot. One of them was my sister-in-law, but I was not willing to bend on that. I wanted people who were raising me up instead of making me feel like I was doing everything wrong. And so I chose that. And it's not easy. I'm not saying this is the format to build a community, because I feel like recognizing when someone makes you feel shitty about your choices and your way that you're parenting, and being able to limit that person in your life is probably the first step. And then finding some resources that maybe you feel supported, whether breastfeeding or pregnant.
That's a really powerful sentiment and a reminder that it's almost as important to know what you don't need
Yeah.
as what you need.
And
Yeah.
I think that's one of the biggest things. And I think it's important to teach that in pregnancy. If you learn how to advocate for yourself during pregnancy and during your birth, that it'll be easier postpartum to be able to say, yeah, we're up for company, but between these hours, and also while you're here, this is going to happen. You're doing a load of laundry, or we're going to make some lactation cookie.
Yeah, that's really helpful. What about things that you think parents are gravitating towards that maybe just aren't necessary?
Ooh, that's a good one. I feel like anything that makes you feel empowered or educated, whether I agree with it or not, is important, right? I don't laugh at anyone, but when people get so caught up in their showers and don't do a nesting party or a postpartum support plan, I'm like, okay, guys, we have to stop here, slow this down. Let's spend as much time planning your postpartum journey as you did on your shower. That's something that I have feelings about. And then also, the other thing that really gets me is that all of these really expensive breast pumps, these non-electrical ones that are battery operated and you can go everywhere with. And that's mom up for, when she can't do that, that she's a failure. And I feel like buying this $500 pump when you're pregnant is really not the answer, because you don't know. You could get just as much milk from a hand pump waiting until you've tried a pump. Most hospitals and doula agencies have breast pumps that you can rent. You just buy the tubing and the flanges specifically for yourself, or borrowing one from a friend and seeing if that's the one that you like and that works with your breasts and your milk flow is probably a better idea. But I wouldn't say there's anything that I see parents gravitating to that I fully disagree with. I think some of the sleep stuff is really taking over. People are feeling like they should have their babies on a sleep schedule now at a certain stage, when that not going to happen until a certain age. And sometimes whoever you're being taught by might not have enough experience to fully understand when something's medically happening with your baby or your breast milk supply is off, that this sleep pattern studying is not, or sleep training is not going to be successful. So those are
Mhm.
probably the only two things that I feel like people are gravitating towards that I might have an opinion or two about.
You mentioned the spending time thinking about postpartum care, because I'm not sure I've ever heard anyone talk about that as an intentional step
Mhm.
that you should be taking. And
Yes.
that seems like a really important one in retrospect, that, like, yeah, why didn't we think about that period?
Who are we calling, on the first day that dad goes back to work, if you're not ready and you're having a meltdown in the morning, I'm not ready to be left alone. Who's the
Oh
person
boy,
we're calling?
totally. Yeah.
Who
I
are we
wish I thought
calling?
about
And or something medically happens in those first 2 days, who's the person in the community that you trust to come to take care of your baby in the way that you want? Cook 20 meals, have your friends over, buy a couple bottles of wine or make sangria or whatever it is. If you drink, if you don't drink, have a fruit punch, order a pizza, and let them cook for you. Make 20 meals minimum. 20
Mhm.
meals that will get you 1 month. 20
Yeah.
meals will get you 1 month. And then learning little simple things like you need 500 extra calories a day. 500 extra calories a day to breastfeed successfully. And the amount of water that you should be drinking is half your body weight. That's something women don't know. Half your body weight in ounces is what you need to successfully get a decent milk supply, good milk supply. And if nobody's taking care of you and you have to worry about cooking 3 meals, especially if you have a toddler, you also have to feed. It's just not feasible in a way that feels easy or good and that you can manage. So that postpartum support needs to be discussed during pregnancy. And I wish that people spent as much time on that as they did planning their shower.
Yeah, that's such a big deal. I just think back to that time in my own life and how valuable that would have been. And then I did it twice and still didn't do it the second time.
But you didn't know, but
yeah,
you
it's
weren't
valuable.
aware. You weren't aware. And I think that if every mom could learn that gap in care for mom in the postpartum will be so different.
If you had this ideal world where people are really thinking about this postpartum period, what should they be thinking about?
They should be thinking about when there is a crisis. I don't like the word crisis, but it is a crisis. When you're having an emotional day or moment because your spouse is leaving you and it's the first day that you're home with one newborn baby or a newborn baby and a toddler, it is a crisis. And I think talking about who's the person that we call here? Who's your best friend? That's definitely a big one. And then when mom starts to struggle emotionally, like I said earlier, at day 3 is when the hormones hit the basement. And those are the hardest days for mom. What if she is not okay? What are we going to do? Who's coming in to take care of the baby?
Yeah.
Who's coming in to take care of them together? Who do we call? Are we familiar with the Edinburgh scale to see if this is a moment where we call, a crisis center or we bring her to a primary care provider? What do we do in those moments? That's one of the things that I think is that people are not educated on. And the nutrition, understanding when we've slipped up and that how do we backtrack it? I really wish that people fully understood that when someone walks into your house, yes, they want to hold the baby, but if they love you or your husband, they're going to be okay with, before you hold the baby, do you think you could start my laundry or sweep my floor? They're going to be so happy to do that.
I love that too, just because it feels like having that conversation before baby arrives is also really useful, because I think it can feel easy to also feel uncomfortable asking for certain things, especially if it's spur of the moment. But if you've thought about it and you have that in place, it probably also makes it feel a little bit easier. And people in your life sometimes are also looking for the direction of what you need from them.
Yes. And you're more comfortable saying, sure, right? Like, what can
Yeah.
I do when they call you the first week and say, we would like to drop you something. Is there anything you need? And you've already had a conversation with
Yeah.
me or someone else who's talked to you about postpartum support. And to say, I wouldn't mind a meal half cooked for tonight.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
Or
that's such a great thing.
Or can you stop by the grocery store and pick up my groceries? I'll send you money. Can
Yeah.
you stop and get me flowers? Or whatever it is that you need to make you feel like you got this day.
So if you had one thing that you would want people to take away from this conversation, what would it be?
Oh gosh. First of all, that your best looks different every single day. And you're going to make mistakes. And it's okay to make a mistake as long as your baby is safe. Then just do everything that you feel is right for you. But forgive yourself for the things that you mess up on, because motherhood is hard.
True.
Beautiful, but also hard.
Well, thank you so much. I learned so much from this conversation. Interested to hear more or get in touch with Deborah? Reach out via her website, pelviclove.com, or follow Deborah on Instagram at Deborah the Doula. Links in the episode description. To keep up to date on our episodes, follow this podcast or find us on Instagram at thestarterset_baby. Know someone who'd love this episode? Pass it on. Thank you for listening. Till next time.